The unsurpassed, profound, and wondrous Dharma is rarely met with even in 100,000 million kalpas. Now we can see and hear it, accept and maintain it. May we unfold the meaning of the Tathagata's truth. All right, thank you all so much for being here this evening. And this Dharma talk is really in response to last week's discussion, where we were discussing a very challenging koan from a book called The Hidden Lamp. Stories from 25 centuries of awakened women. And I really enjoy I like these stories about women, for one, because women are just so much better practitioners than men. I'll just say that. They're much better than us guys. Guys tend to have it easy, I think. And I just think that because my own teacher shared her story and how much difficulty she had in training, and it seemed to be a lot more difficult than most of the men that I am aware of. But in any case, this is a story of Ryonen scars her face. So this is a Japanese woman in the 17th century who is not able to gain entrance into a monastery to train because she's too beautiful. And so, of course, we're talking about a sexist society, and that they're not able to accept her for training in Buddhism. So she does this horrific act of scarring herself in order to get into the temple. And, of course, I don't endorse anybody doing that kind of thing to themselves in order to train in Zen. I hope you don't do that. But I think one of the main points here is to encourage us to not give up despite whatever odds might be facing us. And we all have odds. We all have obstacles in front of us. And often our ego gets in the way. We say, I can't do it. But there's something greater at work here that we want to acknowledge, I think, in two ways. One, there's something greater than ourselves that we want to, I encourage us to put our trust in, to put our faith in. And we call that Buddha. We can put our trust in the Buddha. We can also put our trust in our awakened nature. Or Hotsubo Daishin, the mind that seeks the way, that's also present within us. So it's coming from two directions, outside as well as inside. And oftentimes our ego prevents us from connecting with the Buddha as an external greatness factor and connecting with that aspect of our Buddha nature within us. So let's put that. So this story is encouraging us to do this, but the point I want to bring up here is the reflection of the great Zen teacher Egyoku Nakao. She's a Zen teacher, a Zen abbess at the Zen Center of Los Angeles, and she writes a reflection of the paragraph that I want to bring up here. Today, let's see. Here. Today, the vibrant quest of women into the great matter, and the great matter is referring to life and death, the great matter of life and death, is reshaping how Zen is practiced in the West. Women intuitively bring forth relational and horizontal forms such as councils, circles, and shared stewarding as skillful means that manifest the truth of interrelatedness. And then she says, these forms of co-creating do not depend on hierarchical domination and at the same time affirm the life of all without compromising its depth. So the criticism that she brings forward is that Zen tends to be hierarchical in nature. It's hierarchical in nature. So how do we, and she's making the argument, she's saying that women bring forth this relational element that's maybe somewhat absent in the tradition. I don't know if that's completely true, but I want to dive into how we might understand hierarchy within the Zen tradition in a more positive frame, because that's how my teacher taught it to me. I don't see it as a problem, and I think a lot of people see hierarchy as a problem, and I can understand why. We come from a society that holds up, at least in thought, at least in theory, ideas of democracy, that everybody is equal, everybody is created equal. And we kind of buck at the idea of somebody being higher than somebody else. And so talking about hierarchy is, in a positive light, might seem strange to some people. I don't know. But that's my teacher went to great lengths to explain it to me. And so I feel like it's worth sharing what I understand of it. So I want to start with a story in this book, Zen Seeds by Aoyama Roshi. And it was translated by my teacher, Diane Banaj Roshi. And the story is, it's about a company was having trouble with their employees writing graffiti in the bathroom stall. They were writing graffiti on the bathroom stall, and they kept on making announcements, please do not write graffiti on the bathroom stall. This is coming from the higher-ups in the company. So it's a hierarchical, hierarchical organization, like every organization, and in particular in Japan. And they thought that would stop the graffiti from taking place, but it didn't, until the woman who did the cleaning of the bathroom wrote a note in the bathroom saying, please do not dirty my fine working place. Or something to the equivalent. I don't have the exact words. But please do not dirty my working space. And from that note in the bathroom, the graffiti stopped. Wow. So she managed, on a low end of the hierarchical spectrum, she managed to have great influence on her workspace and on the people who were doing that. She managed to influence them in a way that the people up above weren't. And the bosses recognized also their inadequacy, and that this woman had more power in that situation than they did. And I think one of the ways we can understand this story is if we understand the cosmology of much of Asia. And I think it could be in part looked at through, I brought my calligraphy book here, this particular saying. It is Zuisho Nushi to Naru. Wherever, become your own master. Become your own master, wherever. And this seems to fly in the face of a hierarchical institution. How can you be your own master if there's somebody at the top and there's somebody at the bottom? What does this mean? And especially in a Zen context, which is also very hierarchical, to be your own master. And I think the story I just shared about the woman and the janitor illustrates this point. It illustrates this point. She was the master of her realm. And we in the West, I think we don't give enough attention to our own spheres, the spheres that we actually work in and actually have influence over. But Zen really, in the Zen world, we pay close attention to whatever it is we're doing. And if you're cleaning toilets, that's your main job, and you put full attention in that. If you're washing your hands, that's what you're paying full attention to. Washing your face, or brushing your teeth, or eating a meal, or cooking a meal. These are the things that we pay close attention to, and we don't say that one. Or even I remember hearing a story of a nun, a Japanese nun, scolding a Westerner that was in Japan, saying, "You didn't put the towel back correctly in the bathroom. You think this is all about zazen, don't you? You don't see the practice of just simply replacing the towel properly on the rack." Or my teacher was a real stickler about making sure you wipe up the sink of the bathroom or in the kitchen when you're finished using it, so that it reflects your practice there. That's where your practice is. It's not in having some great attainment on the cushion. She wasn't interested in how great people's attainment were on the cushion and how big insights they had. Can you put your shoes properly at the door? Can you make sure the door is unlocked? I made the mistake maybe a couple of times, and after that I stopped making the mistake of locking my teacher out for morning zazen, because she had to come into a different room, and I was responsible for unlocking the door. And she opened the door and it was locked. Big mistake. That was my job, right? So it means we take what we're doing, our responsibilities, with utmost seriousness. And here, the seat we're sitting on, she would call it, or we call it, in the Zen world, we call that our lion's throne. We call it the throne. It's the throne of enlightenment. The seat we're sitting on, the zafu we're sitting on, is the throne of enlightenment. It's the Buddha's throne. And if that doesn't make you a little bit uncomfortable and you wonder, do I have the right seat? It should, right? You should ask the question, am I sitting on the right seat? This is somebody's throne? Yes! This is your throne that you're sitting on, right? And so we want to sit in a way that we feel like we're in charge. And so again, what does that mean to be in charge? It means you know what your particular place is in the world, and you take full responsibility, take full charge of it. There's to look a little bit more at this Chinese character for ruler, to rule or to be the king or the queen of your world, right? This one here, this bottom one, is for the ruler or the king. And if you look closely at it, just imagine, I'm not going to hold this up, but just imagine an I, the letter I, a capital I, with a line in the middle of it. And the top line, actually there's another line there, but I'm going to just forego that for now. So this Chinese character, the kanji for ruler, the top line is heaven. The middle two lines, like a plus sign, is for human. And the bottom line is symbolic of earth. So it's all wrapped up in that one Chinese character. It means the entire cosmos. The entire cosmos. The heavens above, and it's intimately connected with the human, and the human is intimately connected with the earth. That's a ruler. The ruler knows the will of the cosmos. That's something to think about. The ruler, if a ruler rules well and they're virtuous, their practices of virtue, then they're clear about the will of the cosmos and they enact it on earth. And what does that do? It brings harmony. And this is the worldview that predominated pre-Buddhist entry into China. And Confucius did something really radical with this understanding of the ruler. Because prior to him, it was believed that the ruler is the ruler. But Confucius, in a sense, he democratized it. He said every one of us should act like the ruler. And he was pointing his instructions were not just to any ordinary people. It was for the ruling, those that were ruling. the society. But it didn't exclude anybody in that. So he democratizes, in a sense, this idea that it's only the ruler who has the will of the cosmos in mind and can enact that will in the world. It's actually each one of us. We should each see ourselves as the emperor of our own world. And so let me give you some examples of this kind of thinking here. Those in antiquity who wished to illuminate luminous virtue throughout the world would first govern their states. Wishing to govern their states, they would first bring to order their families. Wishing to bring order to their families, they would first cultivate their own persons. Wishing to cultivate their own persons, they would first rectify their minds. Wishing to rectify their minds, they would first make their thoughts sincere. Wishing to make their thoughts sincere, they would first extend their knowledge. This extension of knowledge lies in the investigation of things. So, this particular statement is talking about these spheres of influence. If you want to make change in the world, we expect that from, we put a lot of trust in, maybe, or at least used to, some of us still do, in politicians in the political realm. And Confucius is saying, if you want the state to change, if you want it to be harmonious, then first focus on the family. If you want the family to be in good harmony, in good working order, then first focus on yourself. If you want yourself to be in working order, you've got to work on sincerity. You've got to work on making your thoughts sincere. And you need to be willing to learn. So you see those rippling of circles outward start with the self. And he says, so if you start with the self and work your way, get your family. Family in Asian society is the root of all benevolence. And when the family is in good working order, when people in the family know their place and they trust the ones that are above them, their parents, and they take care of their parents, and there's a sense of filiality, then you have harmony in the family. And when you have lots of families that have harmony in them, you have a society that's also equally harmonious. And when the society is harmonious, guess what? The earth is also going to be harmonious. We tend to start from the outside and look at the problem in our society. We say, oh, here's the problem. Well, this is what we're going to do to fix it. And so this is getting more towards the root and starting with the self. It's not ignoring that outside problem, but saying that if you want to change something out there, you've got to start with in here. That's the ruler. If we can see ourselves as that, as having that potential to change our world, then we start with ourself. So it's important to have a sense of, I want this world to be better. And then what do we do? Where do we work to have that happen? Well, we work on all of those levels. Well, we can't ignore the self. We can't ignore our families. And I think of how many families are in disarray in our society, the disorder, the levels of abuse and that kind of thing, and levels of misunderstanding. It seems like an impossible ask to work with a family, to work with one's family. But, you might investigate how can I be with my family in a way that creates harmony. And I'll just give a brief example. My family, my parents argued an awful lot when I was growing up. And they would always kind of minimize it by saying, oh, it's not big, this is just us talking to each other. But for me as a little kid, I lived in a lot of fear around my parents. I never knew when the hammer was going to fall and they'd start breaking out. And my mother could be physically abusive. and verbally as well. And that in part, drove me to Zen practice. I just saw a discrepancy with our religious values when you go to church and turn the other cheek and love your neighbor, love your enemy. And I didn't see that, those values really manifesting in home life. I mean, they did to a certain degree, but still, there was a certain level of fear that was prevalent. It wasn't always there, and it wasn't as bad as probably some families, but there was work to do. There was work to do there. And I'm not saying this to blame my parents at all. I'm just offering some self-reflection on my own process here, and something that I learned from my teacher. When I first started training with her, the first 3 months I was with her, she watched how I was doing the dishes, and she saw that my heart really wasn't in it. I never liked washing the dishes. It wasn't something I enjoyed. And it was always somebody's task to do it in my household, and nobody wanted to do it. And we try to weasel out of it. I think a lot of families can resonate with that. A lot of people might no, who wants to wash a dirty dish? And she saw I was washing, and she said, that's not how you wash the dishes. You got to wash the dishes as if it was your own heart. That whatever you do to the outside is what you're doing to the inside. And that completely shifted my perspective. Then I wanted to wash the dishes. Like, oh, wait a minute, this is me. I'm taking care of myself here. This isn't somebody's dish. This is myself. And so I started practicing that way, and my teacher said, anytime you point the finger externally outside you for a problem, no, there's 3 other fingers pointing back. So look at where you're involved first before you start blaming others. So after a few months, I went to visit with my parents, and we had dinner together. And true to form, they started breaking out in an argument at the dinner table while we were eating, and I was feeling very unsettled, and they were very worried about me because I was studying at a Zen center, and they wondered if I was psychologically okay. I was only in my early 20s, and they thought I was in some kind of a cult. They weren't sure. And so anyways, I felt very unsettled, and then my parents started arguing, and I felt even more unsettled. And I thought to myself, oh, here they go again. And then I remembered my teacher's words. Oh, anytime you point your finger outward, look first at yourself. What is your place right here, right now in the Dharma? What's your place? What should you do? What do you need to do right here, right now in the Dharma? And there's this wonderful Zen koan about a monk a novice monk. He comes to the monastery, he has breakfast, he goes to the teacher, and he says, what should I do now? And the teacher says, did you wash your bowls? Go wash your bowls. And the monk was enlightened from that, just from being told, okay, you just do what needs to be done. You do what needs to be done. And as my teacher would say, right here, right now, in the Dharma. And so I saw the spread, this beautiful spread that my mother had made at the dinner table, and the plates we had finished eating, but now we were getting into some kind of a discussion, and the plates needed to be washed. So it would have never occurred to me to pick up those plates, take my parents' plates from them, and bring them to the sink and wash. It would have never occurred to me to do that. But I did it. It occurred to me in that moment because I was in an atmosphere of practice. Like, oh, what needs to be done? If there's a problem in your world, then where's your place in that problem? Let's take the dishes. I'm going to take them over to the sink, and I'm going to start washing them. And guess what happened? My parents stopped arguing because they were so amazed that I would actually wash the dishes. And my mother said, thank God for Diane. So it really shifted things for me to really realize, that's not the end of the story, of course, because families are all in process. And Zen is not a one thing will fix everything. If we just do one thing, everything else is going to get fixed. but rather it's a process, and we keep at it because there's always other things that come up. And I love my mother greatly. It's still, when we get together, we have challenges and difficulties. And so this practice of looking back at myself, what do I need to do here, rather than focusing on her. And this, I use this in my family too, here in Iowa, with the Jisho. I'm off, Jisho is an amazing practitioner and very hard to live with, in the sense that I got to really be on my toes because she knows what I'm supposed to be doing. More than I know, maybe sometimes. So it forces me to really, okay, I got to make sure I'm doing what I need to be doing, and I need that. I benefit from that kind of thing, and so this is what it means to be a ruler. It means we start by looking at ourselves. One other verse from the Confucian liturgy here: heaven is my father and earth is my mother. Okay, there's that triad. Heaven is my father, earth is my mother. And even such a small creature as I find an intimate place in their midst. Where are you? Right here, right now in the Dharma. Right? That's the Genjo Koan. What is your place right here, right now? You have a particular function to carry out. What is it? Right? That, in traditional societies, if you play a particular role, then you know what your function is. But in a society like ours, where the roles are very malleable, this Zen is absolutely essential for us, because we have to open our eyes to what's needing to be done in the present moment and discard our ideas about our roles and step into the roles, or at least, at the very least, ask about, oh, can I do this? Should I do that? And see, Okay. Therefore, that which extends throughout the universe I regard as my body, and that which directs the universe I consider my nature. All people are my brothers and sisters, and all things are my companions. Right? So this is the extension of oneself beyond oneself, to see everything as connected, everyone as related. So I don't think I guess my point here is that we when we often are kind of understandably edgy around the ideas around hierarchy, I think that there is a middle way here between hierarchy and the koan, the genjo, or the koan of what is my life about right here, right now. That also allows for relationality. And I'm kind of confused why the author herself said, she seems to, or the commentator on this particular koan seems to suggest that by saying that there's no horizontal, women intuitively bring forth relational and horizontal forms. I don't agree with that. I think it's already present in Asian culture for sure, especially relationality. It's very, very present there. So to say that she seems to be, if I understand her correctly, insinuating that it's more hierarchical, as though that's not relational. So I think there can be both hierarchy and relationality simultaneously. That's how I experienced practice in Japan, even though it was for fairly short periods of time. But there's also this the beauty of knowing if you know your place, then you don't worry about what you need to do. You just do what you need, what your particular role is. It becomes a little bit more dynamic in the West, where we're not always clear even if we know our place, what our role is. But I hope I feel like one of my roles is to boost people's confidence in knowing what their role is. Like, have that sense of you can do it, right? So, thank you all. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions or comments you want to share or add, please do. I'm going to close this talk.